My name is Grace, and I am 28 years old. I live in Boston, Massachusetts, a city where history echoes through every brick street and where the winter rain paints the sidewalks in silver. To many people, Boston feels alive, full of tradition and energy. But to me, it has always been a mixture of warmth and storms, a place where my happiest memories of my parents are entangled with the deepest grief of losing them. I am pregnant with my first child. As I rest my hands on my growing belly, I feel both fragile and unshakably strong. The 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test had changed everything. It wasn't fear that ran through me that day, it was trembling joy. A fragile hope that after years of pain, maybe I could finally begin a new chapter. But my joy has always carried shadows. My parents were taken from me in a sudden car accident, not long after my wedding. Their absence left me with more than just grief. They left me Willow House, our family's craftsman-style home nestled on the edge of Boston's quiet neighborhoods. It was a gift wrapped in heartbreak. That house was more than bricks. It was Sunday mornings filled with my mother's baking, the sound of my father's record player, the warmth of Christmas lights. Now it was mine, not through celebration, but through tragedy. When I told my husband, Ryan, that we were expecting, he smiled faintly, hugged me, and said the words I thought I wanted to hear. "That's great news." But there was a flicker in his eyes, a flash of coldness I could not ignore. And from that moment on, I began to feel the distance growing, as though something unseen had already started tearing at the fragile threads of our marriage. Ryan's mother, Skylar, never missed a chance to let her bitterness seep into the air. Her words were knives hidden behind tight smiles. "Funny, isn't it? Your parents gave you everything. Let's just hope this baby really belongs to Ryan." She knew exactly how to plant doubt, and I watched Ryan shift under her poison day after day. Even in the quiet moments, as Boston's rain tapped against the windows of our apartment, I felt the storm building. I whispered to my unborn child, promising that no matter what happened, you will be loved. You will be safe. I will fight for you, even if the world turns against us. What I didn't know then was that the storm was not just coming, it was already here. Boston has always been my city, but it hasn't always been kind to me. I grew up in the warmth of 2 parents who adored me, parents who worked hard to give me love, stability, and values rooted in kindness. My father used to read to me every night by the fireplace in Willow House, his voice steady and comforting. My mother filled our home with scents of fresh bread and the warmth of laughter. They were not wealthy, but they made life feel rich. When I married Ryan, my parents welcomed him as though he had always been part of our family. My father offered him a place at our table without hesitation, and my mother treated him like a son. I truly believed I had found what they once shared, a lifelong partner, someone who would protect and cherish me. For a while, I even convinced myself it was true. But the accident changed everything. One phone call shattered my world. The car crash that claimed both of my parents left me standing in the sterile silence of a lawyer's office, listening as he slid a stack of documents across the polished oak table. "Grace, your parents updated their will. Willow House is legally yours now. They wanted to make sure you were taken care of." I nodded through tears, the weight of grief crushing me. That house, once filled with life, was now a monument to loss. When I told Ryan, I expected comfort. I thought he would remind me that we were in this together. Instead, he shrugged. "It's just a house, Grace. Don't get sentimental. We have our own life now." His words stung like a slap. My parents had adored him, trusted him, and yet he looked at their greatest gift as nothing more than property he didn't control. Deep down, I could see something unsettling in his eyes, resentment. The fact that Willow House was mine alone gnawed at him, even though he never said it outright. But if Ryan's silence hurt, his mother's cruelty carved even deeper. Skylar seemed to find joy in pressing on my wounds. She would arrive uninvited, carrying casseroles or folded baby clothes, but her visits were never about kindness. Her words dripped with venom, dressed as concern. "You know, Grace, men don't like secrets. If you're hiding anything from Ryan, Even something small, he'll find out. Her eyes would flick to my growing belly with a sly smirk. I just hope the baby looks like him. Each comment chipped away at Ryan's trust. I could see it. The way he grew quieter, colder, his glances sharp and suspicious. At night, he would turn his back to me in bed, his breathing heavy, as if the weight of her poison had filled the space between us. I tried to remind myself of who I was, of the love my parents had given me. But the more Skylar whispered, the more Ryan withdrew. I stopped calling my friends, afraid he might accuse me of confiding in them. My world shrank to grocery store aisles, doctor's appointments, and the long silence of afternoons spent alone. And still, I whispered promises to the life inside me. You will not grow up unloved. You will not be unwanted. I will give you everything I have, even if I have to fight the world to do it. But as I looked around at my marriage, the cold glances, the suspicion, the constant presence of Skylar's shadow, I felt something heavy settle in my chest. The family I thought I had built was already cracking. The first trimester was a blur of emotions. I remember the morning sickness that rolled in like waves, leaving me pale and exhausted. Some days I could barely lift my head from the pillow. Yet even in those moments, when I pressed my hand against my stomach, I felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. The child growing inside me was proof that my body was stronger than my spirit felt. By the 4th month, the changes became undeniable. My belly curved outward, small but visible, the kind of change that strangers notice in grocery store aisles. A cashier once smiled at me, congratulating me without hesitation, and for a fleeting moment I felt seen, like I was part of something universal and beautiful. At my appointments, Dr. Rebecca Adams became more than just a physician. She was my anchor. Her office smelled faintly of lavender, and her calm, steady tones soothed the storms inside me. During one visit, as she adjusted the monitor around my belly, the sound of my baby's heartbeat filled the room, a strong, rhythmic thump that brought tears to my eyes. Dr. Adams smiled warmly. Everything looks perfect, Grace. Strong heartbeat, steady growth. You're right on track. Nurse Jessica Lane often stayed behind after checkups, chatting with me in her easy, friendly way. She told me stories of other mothers she had helped, not to scare me, but to remind me that resilience was possible. I never told her everything, not about the tension at home, not about Skylar's constant barbs, but her kindness reminded me that I wasn't entirely invisible. At home, however, the warmth of those moments disappeared. Ryan grew more controlling, asking where I had been, why I took so long at the store, who I had spoken to. At first, he framed it as concern, but his voice carried an edge sharp enough to cut. Skylar only added fuel to the fire. She would pat my belly and murmur just loud enough for Ryan to hear. Morning sickness again? Funny how some women exaggerate those things. Well, time will tell if the baby truly takes after Ryan. Blood doesn't lie. Ryan rarely defended me. His silence spoke louder than words, each glance filled with suspicion, each pause weighted with doubt. By the 6th month, the baby's kicks were strong enough to wake me at night. Sometimes I placed my hand on my belly, whispering softly, "You're real. You're mine. You are loved." Those quiet moments of connection with my unborn son were my lifeline. Yet even in those tender moments, grief lurked in the background. I longed for my parents, for my mother to guide me through pregnancy, for my father to reassure me with his steady presence. Willow House stood silent, waiting, and I imagined rocking my baby in the same living room where my father once told me bedtime stories. But inside my marriage, joy was thinning. Ryan's patience had begun to unravel, and Skylar's venomous presence grew bolder. What should have been a season of gentle hands and loving voices was becoming a battlefield of suspicion and silence. By the 7th month, my body felt heavy with both life and exhaustion. I should have been preparing a nursery, choosing baby names, surrounded by laughter and support. Instead, each day felt like walking into a storm. Ryan's patience thinned to threads, snapping at the smallest provocation. He slammed doors hard enough that the pictures on the walls rattled. Sometimes he grabbed my phone out of my hands, scrolling through messages as though searching for proof of a betrayal that didn't exist. His questions grew sharper. Where were you really, Grace? Who were you talking to? I tried to explain, gently, that I had been at Dr. Adams's office, or simply buying groceries, but my answers never softened his suspicion. His silence afterward was worse than shouting, a cold wall between us that stretched across the bed at night. Skylar's influence was everywhere. She had mastered the art of planting suspicion with a smile. When she visited, she would stroke my belly with feigned affection, her voice just loud enough for Ryan. Time will tell. You can't hide blood. Each comment stiffened Ryan's shoulders, deepened the lines of distrust across his face. Skylar's presence poisoned what little air remained in our marriage. By the 8th month, the weight on my back grew unbearable. Sleep was a stranger. My baby's kicks were fierce reminders that life was pushing forward, whether or not I was ready. I would sit by the window, watching Boston's winter rain cascade down the glass, whispering to my unborn child, "Hold on a little longer. We'll make it out of this." But deep inside, I already knew a breaking point was coming. Our apartment no longer felt like home. It felt like a cage. Each room echoed with Ryan's suspicion and Skylar's manipulations, their shadows growing longer, their grip tightening. Chains don't always rattle. Sometimes they creep around you quietly, one link at a time, until you realize you can't move. And I was running out of strength to keep pretending everything was fine. The storm was no longer approaching. It was already at my door. The night labor began. Boston's sky opened in a heavy winter rain. The city always seemed to echo my moods, and tonight it wept with me. Sharp waves of pain gripped my body around midnight, at first faint enough that I tried to dismiss them as practice contractions. But the rhythm was steady, insistent. This was real. I shook Ryan awake, my voice trembling. "It's time. I think I'm in labor." He rolled over, groggy, irritation flickering across his face before a mask of concern appeared.
"Fine. Get your bag."
"I'll grab the keys." His tone carried no warmth, no reassurance. The drive to the hospital was silent except for the rain hammering the roof and my muffled groans. Ryan's knuckles tightened on the steering wheel, his jaw clenched as if the weight of his suspicions mattered more than the life I was about to bring into the world. When we arrived, Nurse Jessica Lane was waiting at the entrance. She helped me into a wheelchair with steady hands. "You're going to be okay, Grace. We've got you." Her calm voice was the comfort I craved but didn't find in my husband. In the labor and delivery room, Dr. Rebecca Adams adjusted the monitors, her voice firm and reassuring. An IV line was started. The baby's heartbeat pulsed steady on the screen. Relief washed over me with every rhythmic beat. Ryan paced in the corner, restless, his phone glowing in his hand. I knew who he was texting, Skylar. Even here, even now, he couldn't let her go. Hours blurred into contractions sharp enough to steal my breath. I whispered through clenched teeth. "I can do this. I have to do this." Jessica squeezed my hand, guiding me through the rhythm of breathing. And then the door slammed open. Skylar stormed in, her heels clicking against the tile. Her eyes locked on me, filled with venom. "Tell the truth, Grace. This child isn't his, is it?" Ryan's face twisted with rage as he repeated her words. "Whose child is this, Grace? Don't lie to me." The monitors beeped frantically as my body tensed. "Stop, please. This is your baby. Our baby. Why can't you believe me?" My voice cracked with desperation, but they weren't listening. Skylar lunged forward first, her hand tangling in my hair. With a violent yank, she dragged me toward the edge of the bed. Ryan joined her, gripping my arm. Together they ripped me off the mattress, my body crashing onto the cold hospital floor. A scream tore from my throat, a mix of pain, fear, and betrayal. The monitor shrieked as the baby's heartbeat faltered. "Stop, please." My voice was hoarse, but my cries only seemed to fuel their rage. Jessica shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Security.
Now."
She lunged to pull Ryan back, but he shoved her against the wall. The room erupted in alarms and hurried footsteps. Dr. Adams dropped to her knees beside me, her hands steady as she tried to protect both me and my unborn child. "Don't move, Grace.
Stay with me.
We're getting you back on the bed." Within seconds, 2 security officers burst into the room, followed closely by Officer Brian, who had been nearby responding to another call. His voice cut like steel through the madness. "Step away from her. Now." Ryan and Skylar froze, their faces twisted in fury. The officers moved fast, wrenching their arms behind their backs and snapping handcuffs on them. Skylar cursed. Ryan shouted incoherently, but they were dragged out of the room, their voices fading down the corridor. I lay trembling on the floor, tears mixing with sweat, my body convulsing as another contraction tore through me. The baby's heartbeat flickered weakly on the monitor until Dr. Adams and Jessica lifted me back onto the bed, reattaching the sensors, stabilizing me. When the sound steadied again, relief broke through me in sobs. In that moment, I realized my fight wasn't just for survival, it was for freedom. The room still pulsed with echoes of chaos after Ryan and Skylar were dragged away. My body shook uncontrollably, not only from the contractions, but from the terror that had ripped through me minutes earlier. Nurse Jessica Lane clutched my hand tightly, grounding me with her steady grip. "They're gone, Grace. You're safe now. Focus on your baby." Dr. Rebecca Adams leaned over me, her calm voice cutting through the noise. "We need to concentrate. Your body is ready. It's time to bring this baby into the world." Her words anchored me. The monitors flickered as the baby's heartbeat steadied again, strong and rhythmic. Relief flickered across Dr. Adams's face. "He's holding on. Let's help him arrive." The contractions surged with brutal intensity, tearing through me like waves determined to break me apart. Sweat drenched my forehead as I gripped the rails of the bed, every muscle straining. My mind replayed the violence, the ripping pain of being dragged by my hair, the cold hospital floor, Ryan's twisted face, Skylar's claws, but I pushed those images aside. This wasn't about them anymore. This was about life, about the small soul fighting with me. Jessica's voice was in my ear, calm but commanding. "Breathe, Grace. In through your nose, out through your mouth. You're stronger than this pain. You can do this." Minutes blurred into an eternity until finally, Dr. Adams's voice rose with urgency. "One more push, Grace. He's almost here. Give me everything you have." I screamed, every ounce of strength pouring from my body. And then silence for a heartbeat, followed by the sharpest, most beautiful sound I had ever heard, my baby's cry. The room exhaled with me. Tears streamed down my face as Dr. Adams lifted a tiny, wriggling body into the air. "Congratulations, Grace. You have a son." They placed him against my chest, his skin warm and damp. His cries softened as he nestled close, his tiny heart pounding against mine. My arms trembled as I wrapped them around him, kissing the crown of his head. "You're here. You're safe. You're mine." For a moment, the world outside that room didn't exist. Not Ryan's fury, not Skylar's venom, not the fear that had stalked me for months. Only me, my son, and the sound of his fragile breath against my skin. But I knew the battle wasn't over. Justice still waited. The scars of that night would follow me into the courtroom. And yet, holding my son in my arms, I realized something. I wasn't afraid anymore. He was my reason. My proof that love could survive even in the darkest storm. Morning light filtered through the blinds of my hospital room, soft and golden, as though the city itself was offering me a fragile peace after the storm. My son lay in a bassinet beside me, swaddled in a blue blanket, his tiny chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. Every breath he took steadied the storm inside me. The knock on the door reminded me that peace was fleeting. Victoria, the victim advocate assigned to my case, entered with a file in her hands and kind eyes that carried no judgment. She explained what would happen next. The state of Massachusetts had officially filed charges against Ryan and Skylar for assault, domestic violence, and endangering both me and my unborn child. I wouldn't have to carry the burden of prosecution. The state itself would take the case forward. My role would be to provide testimony, and because of my recovery and my newborn, the court would allow me to testify via secure video link. I listened, clutching my son close, relief mixing with exhaustion. For the first time, I didn't feel completely alone. Discharge day arrived sooner than expected. Nurse Jessica Lane helped fasten the straps of the infant car seat, checking and rechecking them with careful hands. She leaned down, whispering, "You're stronger than you know, Grace. Don't forget that." Her words felt like a promise, one I vowed to carry. The taxi ride through Boston was quiet. The city looked different now, the cobblestone streets slick with rain, the skyline sharp against the gray sky, as though it had shifted with me. When the car pulled up to Willow House, my parents' old craftsman home, my chest tightened. The porch stood steady, its wooden beams weathered but strong. The garden, once my mother's pride, had grown wild, weeds curling between stones. Yet even in its neglect, the house felt alive, as if it had been waiting for me to return. I carried my son up the steps, the key trembling in my hand as I unlocked the front door. The hinges creaked, releasing a rush of familiar air tinged with cedar and dust. Inside, memories clung to every corner. My father's record player in the living room, the kitchen where my mother once baked bread, the fireplace where holidays had glowed. Standing there, with my baby in my arms, I whispered, "We're home." That night, after feeding him and settling him in the old cradle my parents had saved, I sat at the kitchen table. Papers lay scattered before me. Hospital reports, court documents, and letters from the prosecutor's office. Fear pressed against my shoulders, but underneath it, something new stirred. Resolve. Willow House was not just shelter. It was inheritance. Protection. A foundation for rebuilding. Ryan and Skylar had tried to strip me of safety, but here I had walls built for my parents' love and a roof that whispered, "Begin again." As my son sighed softly in his sleep, I realized the key I had turned in the lock wasn't just for a house. It was for freedom. The weeks that followed felt like living in two worlds at once. By day, I was a new mother, learning my son's rhythms, holding him through sleepless nights, whispering lullabies in the dim glow of Willow House. By night, I was a survivor, reviewing legal documents, answering calls from Victoria, my victim advocate, and preparing for hearings that would decide both my freedom and my son's future. One morning, a thick envelope arrived from Family Court of Massachusetts. Inside were the notices, the date of my divorce hearing, and the custody case. My chest tightened as I read the details. I wouldn't need to appear in person. Because of my recovery and my newborn, the judge had approved secure video link testimony. My son was too young to be in court, and I was not strong enough to endure the confrontation face-to-face. It was a relief, and still a burden. On the day of the hearing, I sat in Willow House's study, my laptop open, the screen connecting me to the sterile courtroom across the city. Judge Monica Harris presided, her presence commanding even through the camera. To one side of the courtroom sat Ryan, dressed in a wrinkled suit, his face hard, his eyes cold. Skylar wasn't allowed in. Her bail conditions barred her from family court proceedings. My attorney, speaking on my behalf, presented the documents. The marriage had broken down irretrievably. Police reports and hospital records proved the assault. A witness statements from Dr. Adams, Nurse Lane, and Officer Bryan confirmed the events. Then it was my turn. My hands trembled as I adjusted the microphone, but my voice was steady. "Your Honor, my marriage is over. I cannot raise my child in fear. My parents left me Willow House, so I would always have a safe place, and I intend to honor that gift. All I ask is the right to raise my son in peace." Judge Harris listened, her expression firm but compassionate. She leaned forward, her words deliberate. "This court finds that the marriage between Grace and Ryan is irretrievably broken. Divorce is granted. Willow House, as inherited property, shall remain solely with Grace. Custody of the minor child is awarded to Grace, with sole decision-making authority. Ryan is limited to supervised visitation only, contingent upon completion of domestic violence intervention and anger management programs. Tears blurred my vision. Not tears of grief, but of release. The gavel struck. In that moment, a chain that had bound me finally snapped. I closed the laptop, pulling my son into my arms. For the first time in months, I felt air fill my lungs without weight pressing it down. The law had spoken, and for once it spoke for me. The criminal trial moved faster than I had expected. Because the assault had happened inside a hospital, with witnesses and security footage, the state of Massachusetts had more than enough evidence to prosecute without hesitation. I wasn't the one pressing charges. The state itself had taken the burden for me.
My role was simple but terrifying: to testify.
On the morning of the trial, I sat again in Willow House, my baby asleep in the cradle beside me. A secure video link connected me to the courtroom. The weight of the moment pressed against me, but this time I wasn't alone. Victoria, my victim advocate, sat quietly at my side, her hand resting on mine for reassurance. The camera revealed the courtroom in sharp detail. Prosecutor Patrick Hayes stood ready with files spread across the table. Ryan sat at the defense bench, his face hollow, jaw set tight. Skylar sat beside him, her expression sharp, though fear flickered in her eyes when she glanced at the jury. Patrick Hayes presented the case with precision. A hospital security footage showed Skylar grabbing my hair and dragging me from the bed. Witness statements from Dr. Rebecca Adams and Nurse Jessica Lane detailed how Ryan joined in, pulling me off the mattress while I was in labor. Officer Bryan's report described finding me on the floor, monitors screaming, as he arrested them both on the spot. Medical records confirmed the risk posed to both me and my unborn child. When my turn came, the courtroom screen filled with my face. My voice was steady, though my heart pounded. Your Honor, I was in labor. I was fighting for my baby's life. Instead of supporting me, Ryan and Skylar attacked me. They put both me and my son at risk. I will never forget the fear I felt that night, but I will also never stop fighting to protect my child. The defense tried to argue stress, to minimize the assault, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning unanimous guilty verdicts. Judge Monica Harris addressed the courtroom with firm authority. Ryan Carter, you are convicted of domestic assault and battery and endangering the welfare of a child. You are sentenced to 5 years in state prison, followed by mandatory completion of a domestic violence intervention program and anger management counseling. You will remain under probation supervision after release, with a permanent restraining order prohibiting contact with Grace or the child. Her gaze shifted to Skylar. Skylar Carter, you are convicted of aggravated assault and reckless endangerment. You are sentenced to 3 years in state prison, followed by probation and mandatory psychological counseling. You, too, are subject to a permanent restraining order. The gavel fell, echoing like thunder through the room. Through the screen, I watched Ryan's shoulders slump, Skylar's face crumble. For the first time in months, I didn't feel powerless. Justice had not only spoken, it had roared. Back in Willow House, I held my son close, whispering into his tiny ear. It's over now. We're safe. We're free. The trial was over. The sentences had been handed down. For the first time in months, I felt the weight lift from my chest. The storm that had nearly destroyed me was behind iron bars, no longer able to reach into my home, no longer able to poison my nights with fear. Willow House became more than a structure of wood and stone. It became sanctuary. Its creaking floors and weathered walls carried the memory of my parents, but now, with my son in my arms, it carried the promise of a future. The first few weeks after the verdict, I moved through life quietly, learning the rhythms of motherhood. Midnight feedings, the soft cooing of my baby, the way he curled his tiny fingers around mine, these moments stitched me back together. Every sigh, every small smile was proof that love could grow even in the ashes of betrayal. I sat often by the window, watching Boston seasons shift. The winter snow gave way to the first hints of spring, and with it came renewal. My son's laughter, small but bright, filled the rooms that had once echoed with silence. His crib sat in the same corner where my father's record player once stood, a bridge between past and future. There were still scars, physical, emotional, that whispered reminders of a night in the hospital. Sometimes, when the house was quiet, I replayed the sound of Skylar's voice, Ryan's hands pulling me from the bed. But then my son would stir, and his cry would pull me back to the present, back to life. I reminded myself, they no longer had power over me. The law had seen them for what they were, and justice had answered. One evening, I stood on the porch of Willow House, cradling my son as the setting sun cast golden light over the city. I whispered to him softly, "This is our new beginning. You'll grow up safe, loved, and free, and I'll never let the darkness touch you again." For the first time since my parents' passing, I felt them near. Their home had sheltered me through grief, and now it sheltered the next generation. The story that had begun in fear ended in strength. I was no longer just Grace, the woman who had endured betrayal and violence. I was Grace, mother, survivor, protector. And as I rocked my son gently in the fading light, I knew the truth. The storm had passed, but love was here to stay. Thank you for watching this story. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories. Your support helps us continue bringing you meaningful content every week.